So recently we've seen a lot of trend on hydrodipping sneakers, and it's been fun to see a lot of people trying it out for the very first time. But as you guys can see, I've done quite a few hydrodip sneakers in the last year on my channel, and as a result, I wanted to give you guys 5 mistakes made when hydrodipping sneakers. What is going on, guys? Hess here, collectivekicks.com. If you guys want to shop this week's top sneaker deals, check the link in the description, and happy shopping. If you guys want to save 10% on Rejuvenator, this is my sneaker cleaning product of choice. Check the link in the description to go to their site and use code heskicks10 to save you 10% off your entire order. My recommendation is personally the 3-brush laundry system. It's pretty much a capture of everything you need. 3 different brushes for different types of materials. The Rejuvenator sneaker cleaner, shoe trees, as well as a laundry bag. It's a full gamut that you need for cleaning sneakers, and it works really well in my opinion. One thing I wanted to note from the beginning though, there's 2 different types of hydrodipping out there that we've seen. There's hydrodipping that uses spray can paint, and then there's also hydrodipping that uses hydrographic prints. Now, if you've seen a lot of my videos, they've been the ones that focus mainly on hydrographic prints because that's just something that I was more interested in. The hydrodip with the paint looks kind of cool, but it definitely looks like it could be really sloppy and clumpy. And if you don't know what you're doing on the wrong materials, it definitely can ruin your shoes. But as examples, I've seen some with Yeezys that look pretty vibrant, but I honestly don't think that they're very wearable. And the materials, especially when that paint dries, is going to be really stiff. Anyways, let's go ahead and jump into the video. So one of the first mistakes that I think that people will have when they're hydrodipping sneakers is not taping off the shoe properly. If you do not tape off the shoe properly, you're going to get hydrographic print or paint in areas that you do not want. So you definitely have to make sure that you tape it off appropriately. One thing to note, I didn't even tape this one off. This was a burner pair that I had. This was like a super beater pair that I had of Epic Reacts, and I wanted to test on the React material, but obviously had a ton of problems. And I'm showing you this for a number of reasons because you could see it is definitely not a perfect process when you make these shoes. But I'll get into more of that in just a second. And part of the taping process, I definitely recommend that you tape off the soles as well. Honestly, hydrodipping is not going to work on your soles because you're walking on the ground. So as you walk and rub your foot on the ground, it's just a thin layer of paint on the bottom of the sole. So it's not going to stick on no matter what. You're really never going to be able to paint the bottom of a shoe and have it stay on. It's one thing if you dye it, it's another thing if you try to paint it. Hydrodipping the bottoms of a shoes will absolutely not work. So you definitely want to tape off the bottom of the shoe. On a positive note though, if you do decide to not tape off the bottom, you can use acetone and remove paint from the bottom of your shoe, as well as other unwanted areas such as the heel cup back here. So you can use acetone to remove, or nail polish remover. Obviously, if you do pretty decent tape jobs like this, then the effects of the shoe will look more factory, versus if you don't tape off anything, then you definitely get a little bit of a crazier look. Definitely more artistic, I guess. But if you're going for that polished, fresh out of the box factory look, it's definitely not something that works. And speaking of Air Force Ones, the number 4 mistake that people will make when hydrodipping their sneakers, especially when you're using leather, would be not preparing the shoe with acetone, or also not adding a finisher at the end of the process. So before you dip your Air Force One or any leather shoe, you need to prep it first because you're literally trying to strip off the finish of the factory paint. Otherwise, it doesn't adhere as well as it should, and in the end, it will end up rubbing off and not staying intact as well as it can. Also, when you're applying the acetone before you decide to do the hydrodip, you need to wait for the shoe to completely dry before you actually go in and start doing the hydrodip. If it's wet with the acetone, it's obviously going to have problems when you're dipping the paint. You can see this one actually worked really well, and I've worn this a handful of times. Even with the creasing, the paint didn't slough off. So the other reason why that's not chipping off, not only did I prepare it with acetone, you have to apply a finishing layer to it. You could do a gloss finish or a matte finish. I preferred a matte finish so it didn't look really, really crazy and shiny. But it is really important that you seal on the paint to the leather, otherwise it just will not stick. And when you're spraying on the finisher of the shoe on top of the hydrographic print, you want to make sure the shoe is dry before you spray it. If you apply it when the shoe is wet, it's obviously not going to do what it's supposed to do. When I did my Ultra Boost back last year, these are the ones that I did. And I've worn them quite a bit, and you could see there's a little bit of paint scuffed up from the back, but that's just because of me just hitting it on shopping cart wheels and stuff like that as I'm walking around. But for the most part, it actually stuck up pretty well. And for the areas that it looks flawed, it was more flawed because of actually the way that I dipped the shoe. But for some reason, Adidas Boost material, I actually haven't used finishers on it too much in the past. because I haven't had the need to, but in recent pairs I've actually started applying a finisher just to give it that little extra layer of protection. So the number 3 mistake that people make when hydro dipping sneakers is some people actually double dip the shoe when the shoe is still wet. So with hydrographic prints, it's an absolute must. Do not do that because you will have a shoe that will not work out at all. You have to wait. If you're gonna do a dip in 2 different sides, like let's say I wanted to do this half, and then later I wanted to do this half just to make it a perfect push and pull, you'd have to do it in 2 different sessions. You can't just do one and then try to do this one that's all wet. And I mean, it has to be dry. As for the regular can paint, I've seen a lot of people do double, triple dips. Maybe that one works. It looks like it works. I don't know the longevity of the paint on the materials that people are actually trying it on. So it may work. It may actually just fall off, especially after wear. I'm not 100% sure. But my recommendation on the graphic print, at least, is definitely don't double dip when it's wet. And on that same vein, if you're using a hydrographic print, you have to make sure that the print is right side up when you are planning on dipping it. If you don't have the print facing the right direction, then it will definitely do some crazy stuff and like blow up basically in the water once you spray the activator on it, and it will not bind to your shoe. The other thing is when you're dipping, you cannot have water on the top of the hydrographic film. So you put it, let's say you put it in the film and then you're spraying the activator on top of the film with water on top of that, it's not gonna bind to the shoe because it's all wet. You have to make sure that there's no water on top of the film before the activator touches it. So the number 2 mistake that people make when hydro dipping sneakers is not knowing the material impact. Some materials definitely work better than other ones. There's no doubt about it. As you can see, I struggle with the Nike React a little bit, but honestly, this one wasn't because of the Nike React. It was actually because of the hydrographic film. The film itself was terrible, and because of it, it definitely did not adhere the way that it should have. And I know that this was a film that caused a majority of the issues on this shoe. This one was definitely a beater though, and I was just actually trying to see if it would adhere right. I do have another pair of Nike Reacts that I am going to do a video on just to give that test, and you guys can stay tuned for that video on my channel and subscribe if you haven't already. But ideally, hydrographic prints are made for using on hard materials like metals and hard plastics, motorcycle parts, and actually automotive parts as well. So they're not really made for soft, malleable sneakers with really soft, flexible rubbers. Also on stretch uppers, prime knit, fly knit, it won't adhere properly if you use it on something like that. You could see right here, I had some here and it just falls right off when you actually are rinsing it off. It does not work at all on prime knit or fly knit, but again, that's a hydrographic print. As for the other stuff, I'm not sure. It might work the paint, but it might make it really stiff, as I said, because this is a stretch material. It's made to be stretchy, but if somebody has hydrodip prime knit or fly knit and it actually worked really well and actually is not stiff, then leave a comment or send me a picture and let me know. Some synthetic materials just won't work at all. Like I mentioned, neoprene stretch materials on uppers, but the materials that I found that it works best on is Adidas Boost. I've worn these a dozen times already and it actually worked really, really well on my Adidas Boost, and it works really well on regular leather like on Air Force Ones if you prep the shoe and finish the shoe, as I mentioned already. And it also works on canvas materials from what I understand, and I haven't actually tried it on a canvas shoe, but it makes sense to me since canvas takes on color really, really well, which is why I use it for like dip dyes and stuff like that. But anyways, if you guys like this video and it was somewhat informative to you guys, especially those people new on the market, leave a comment and a thumbs up on this video and let me know what you guys think, and I can do more in-depth stuff like this in the future. The number 1 mistake though that I think people make when they start hydro dipping is that they don't practice. It's absolutely critical that if you're going to do something and expect the results to come out perfect every single time, you're gonna have to practice in order to make that happen. You can't expect to just dip the shoe and have it turn out magical and not really have done all of your research to make it work. In fact, probably some of you guys are watching this video trying to figure out what they did wrong when they hydro dipped something based on a video that they saw that made it look so easy but didn't explain any of the parts. There's a lot more to the approach on how you actually dip the shoe, at what angle, how you avoid air bubbles from actually showing up on your print, what you have to do to prep and tape your shoe, temperature the water should be, how often you have to cycle out the water. Those are all questions that like should be asked probably when you are actually trying to do this stuff at home, because there's a lot involved. If you want to see like a super detailed video on every little step, like leave a comment and let me know, and I'll do that in one of my future hydro dip videos, and I'll make it more like a how-to video for you guys instead. But as I was saying, you just really have to practice if you don't expect to ruin your items. Make sure the film's right side up. You test it on either a dummy pair of shoes that you could buy from Goodwill or test it on a rock, like literally test it on something to make sure that the film is the right side up, because you don't want to have the film the wrong side up, put it down, and then ruin your shoes. And I've had that happen a couple different times where I just did not know that it was the wrong way, because it was really hard to tell. Some prints are really easy to tell that they're the right way up. Other ones are really, really difficult, and honestly, it was a crapshoot every single time when I put the film down if it was right side up or not. Also, as I mentioned, some prints don't come out perfectly. Like this print was terrible. This Galaxy print I tried on 3 or 4 different shoes, and every single time it did not work. This one actually was one where you don't need to tape off the print, because if you do, it actually overexpands, and because it overexpands, it actually causes ripples in the print, and because of that, the ripples show up and transfer onto the product. So you don't want that to happen. But another thing that happens when you're doing the hydrographic prints is you spray, and when you're using the spray, you might be running out. But if you run out of spray, it actually causes a lot of problems on the print as well, and it might not actually go through the water the way that it's supposed to, which is definitely problematic as well. So that can easily be another culprit for something not turning out perfectly. When you look at the print in the water, it really needs to look like a puddle of liquid before you push it through. If it doesn't look liquid enough, then you don't have enough spray. Also, super important, the air bubbles. You got to make sure the air bubbles are worked out underneath. They'll also cause a pocket, and then they won't actually adhere to the shoe 100%. I had some air bubble issues right here as well. You can also get air bubbles as you're pressing the shoe through the water. There's holes in air that can escape through and actually pop up and give me an air bubble here because of the direction that I'm actually pressing the shoe through the water. And you notice right here, there's actually a heel drag, and it's a really elongated print because I didn't press down and then rotate down. I pressed down like this, and it stretched it all the way down as I push it through the water. So part of that is just technique and learning as you're doing more and more hydro dips, but honestly, every single one is kind of a crapshoot. There really has to be like all elements on your side to make sure that everything actually works perfectly on the shoe, and even at that, sometimes it doesn't come out perfect. Anyway, all I can say is that you need to practice, practice, practice. Watch as many hydro dip videos as you can. Study the techniques as best you can. Last cautionary note that I will say is you should be using gloves when you hydro dip, as well as using a mask. When you spray the chemicals and stuff, they're not healthy. Like when I do this stuff, I make sure my kids are not home. But anyways, that's the video. Hopefully you guys found it informative. And if you guys are interested in hydro dipping, check the link in the description. It's a playlist to all of my other hydro dip videos. It's a lot of fun trying new things and doing different prints, and just constantly just doing different dips. So if you guys want to see more of these videos, leave a thumbs up on this video. I am planning on doing some more. I mean, I have a bunch that I purchased if you guys saw my last Nike employee store haul. In fact, I'm going to be giving away some of the Air Force Ones that I dip, as well as the Air Jordan 1 mid that I got. So some of those things are just fun for me to be able to do, and I'll give you guys a little bit more opportunity to have a say into what gets done. But that is the video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed, and we'll catch you guys for some more videos very soon. Peace, guys.